Two hidden monster taming gems appeared on the original PlayStation and PS2, called Jade Cocoon and its sequel, Jade Cocoon 2. Many gamers thought, and still think, these games were capable of challenging the quickly growing Pokemon games through a combination of graphics, RPG elements, and most especially, a deep fusion system that allowed the player to create countless combinations of monsters that shared physical characteristics and elemental typing. The dark atmosphere, JRPG influence, and art style heavily inspired by Studio Ghibli contribute to these games being loved by gamers over 2 decades later. With the recent success of the monster fusion game Cassette Beasts, which takes inspiration from Pokemon but adds a 90s twist and a procedurally generated fusion system, and the continued success of Shin Megami Tensei, a dark and gritty JRPG series that features demons, gods, and a fully developed fusion system, there's never been a better time to reintroduce these often overlooked monster taming games. But what's the best way to reintroduce these games? In a gaming landscape full of remasters, reboots, and franchise revivals, we aren't short on options. Should they be PS5 exclusives? What about a definitive edition? And can we please update the Silent Hill style controls featured in Jade Cocoon 1? Let's go ahead and jump on in. Currently, both games are only available on PS1 and PS2 or through emulation, which, as we discussed in our Digimon World 3 video, emulation can be hard and might require a level of technical skill that some gamers do not have, and that's without considering the significant cost with purchasing a physical copy of either of these games. So let's talk about what remastering these games might look like. Releasing these games on modern consoles will not only tremendously help with accessibility, but revisiting the franchise opens the possibility of having a definitive edition or editions. A few changes we'd love to see to the original Jade Cocoon are fast travel, better distribution of secret weapons, updated controls since tank controls are completely out of place in modern gaming, and less color swaps of monsters, which should allow for even more physical diversity when fusing your monsters together. An overall increase in gameplay speed to get through battles in other parts of the game more quickly, and a more clearly defined definition of monster stats that will allow you to build more strategy when fusing your monsters. Jade Cocoon 2 improved on several aspects of the original game, including a new battle system that sees you use up to 3 monsters at one time, and battle formations that are heavily influenced by the fusion of your monsters. For example, a monster with fire wind elements will likely be placed on the fire wind tile. One key aspect I'd love to see updated for Jade Cocoon 2 is the fusion system. In the original game, fusions took physical parts of each monster and smashed them together, in addition to fusing elemental typing. But in the second game, they kept a base monster and most merged elements, but not physical parts. This change might be difficult to overcome, but the best part of the first game is the combination of monsters you can create, and as a kid, I was very surprised to see that this physical combination of monsters found in the first game was not present in the sequel. The last major change I'd love to see with the definitive editions of these games is an expansion to the lore of Jade Cocoon. We might have mentioned that Jade Cocoon is a relatively short game at roughly 10 to 13 hours. And Jade Cocoon 2 takes place around 100 years after the first game. Many of the main characters are still present or mentioned in Jade Cocoon 2, such as Levant, Kikinak, and Mahu. So why not expand on the original Jade Cocoon to help bridge the gap? Maybe we see Levant's life after defeating the final boss in Jade Cocoon. We'd have a much deeper understanding of Levant and the final stages of the Jade Cocoon story, which would be even more powerful. We also see a pretty different Jade Cocoon universe 100 years later, so there's likely tons of lore, monsters, and other developments that would more effectively explain how this universe has changed over time. I would love to see these two games combined into one cohesive story, but the battle and fusion mechanic changes between the two games might be too difficult to overcome. Let me know down below if you prefer these games get merged into one story, or if you prefer an expansion of Jade Cocoon 1 or something else. But what if we got a new release to the series? A reboot or new game set in the same universe? These games would do well as cross-platform games, and despite looking at these games in retrospect and only seeing underwhelming graphics, both games were considered beautiful games upon release, and I'd love to see these games take advantage of next-gen console or PC power, meaning if Ubisoft, or any developer for that matter, were to continue the franchise, I hope they would not cater to the lower spec of the Nintendo Switch. Shin Megami Tensei 5 is a great example of why Jade Cocoon remakes should not be developed for Switch, but possibly ported over after the launch on more powerful consoles. Shin Megami Tensei 5 can be jumpy with many creatures in the distance running at 15 FPS, the detail of the Rune World can't be fully appreciated because textures are blurry, and physical appearance of monsters can't be as detailed as they would be in other games on other systems. Many monster taming games feature gorgeous pixel art, but the Jade Cocoon games do such a phenomenal job of creating amazing looking minions through fusion in the first game, and showcasing the Divine Beast lines in the second game. I would look forward to seeing these amazing monsters with modern 3D graphics and textures. And I have to mention the forest you traverse, which can be repetitive at times, but the atmosphere at each level is something I'd really look forward to traveling through in a modern release of these games. As monster taming fans, we're always curious if there will be a true competitor to Pokemon. It's likely that indie games won't ever reach the critical mass needed, even if some recent entries like Coromon and Cassette Beasts give Pokemon a run for their money in terms of gameplay and charm. and games like Shin Megami Tensei that take a darker, more mature approach to monster taming still compete on the same hardware as Pokemon. What if the new Jade Cocoon games were PS5 exclusives developed from a studio like Square Enix, Naughty Dog, or Santa Monica Studio? We would expect graphics, story, and overall polish that might be unmatched in the monster taming genre. There's no reason why monster taming games can't provide a AAA gaming experience, especially in 2023. The key to making a strong, story-driven monster taming game is focusing on the main character, or monster tamer in the game. Jade Cocoon 1 and 2 don't have the most groundbreaking stories, but Levant and Kahu are the vehicles in which we experience the story, and the minions and divine beasts are meant to be tamed, fused, and raised in accordance with our goals. The idea of Jade Cocoon minions or beasts not being cute animals that are your forever pals would allow a development team to focus more on the fusion system, RPG system, and creating a deep and rich story that could be told over a series of games. Imagine set pieces that rival what we see in God of War or the rich storytelling shown in games like the Last of Us series. This would create a tremendous alternative to Pokemon, especially for gamers that are looking for a more developed monster taming franchise. And yes, these might be far-reaching dreams of someone who might irrationally love the Jade Cocoon games, but the point still stands. We need more great monster taming games, and not just games that focus on monster taming. It's extremely unlikely that we ever see the Jade Cocoon franchise revived. Many fans have turned to emulation to add new features like randomization to the game, or completely moved on to other franchises, forever leaving their dreams of hunting minions and divine beasts on modern consoles far behind. And while there are many other monster taming alternatives in 2023, none of them quite capture the essence, atmosphere, and fusion goodness of the Jade Cocoon games. There are many ways for the franchise to be revived, and we'd be happy to see any of them implemented. Leave a comment down below on how you want this franchise to be revived. Do you want to see the games remastered? Do you want to see a new game in the series? And as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe to keep updated on all our future videos. That's all for now, and we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.